All right, we are back on the Fireside PM podcast with Dave Martin, who has written a book called The Product Momentum Gap. Welcome to the show, Dave.
Hi, Tom. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, before we get into the book, why don't we just start with a little bit about who you are, your background, and then we'll jump in.
Yeah, sure thing. I'm based over in the UK, and I've spent about 20 years of my career in different product leadership roles, from startup to large corporate. And the last 4 years or so, I've spent most of my time coaching product leaders in the UK, and during that journey, getting a lot of exposure with different companies, and seeing different boards approaches and how different exec teams function. um, Started to see some consistent traits and behaviors, and that inspired me to want to share it. So that's how the book got started. And I've been working for a while with my co-author, Andrea Sayers. She helps me. We write blogs together and have done for a long while, and put a white paper out together, which is kind of our MVP of our book. And
Yeah,
we, after doing that work together, we decided to go in all in and write a book, which is, if anyone hasn't done it, is a significant endeavor. So I'm really pleased it's live, launched, and out there in the world.
that's great. What kind of feedback did you get when you did the white paper that was sufficient for you to feel like, okay, let's go for the big project now?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, our real focus there was a bit about wanting to know whether it got shared, and a bit of social proof. But
Mm-hmm.
most importantly, the direct questions, the qualitative feedback. And what we kept getting back was the white paper had a bit of a clickbaity title. It had "Product Market Fit is Dead," which was to get people to think about it a bit more. But
Yeah.
the feedback was consistent. Consistent that product market fit is considered. Everybody seemed to feedback really resonate well that the idea of product market fit being a binary thing, especially in
Mm-hmm.
scale up, which is the part of the journey I work with mostly, is part in that scale up place. We go and secure some big funding because we've achieved this binary thing. It's not binary, of
Mm-hmm.
course. It's linear.
Mm-hmm.
It's strong or weak. And then wonder why, when we start to scale, things don't go as planned sometimes. And a lot of the reason, of course, is that we're viewing PMF as a binary thing rather than as a linear measure. And the market is quite a parameter. We don't look at that dimension enough. We just look at our product. So as businesses scale, they tend to go out of the sub niche within the segment they're working in, and go a little broader. They have more salespeople, more marketing people, more conversations, more reach, and their product's not as good a fit for that broader niche. But it's not often the experience, at least in the UK. I can't talk for US startups because I don't work with US startups, but the UK startups definitely aren't systematic about that scaling around how they think about the market. Not all the time, a bit more opportunist, and it
Mm-hmm.
can lead to a lot of wasted effort, a lot of wasted development, a lot of feature bloat. And whilst that's going on, sales cycles slowing down and churn going up, and the growth rate starting to look average, not nowhere near the the ambition that the founder had when they raised the capital in the first place. So the feedback there was really founders and product leaders saying,
Mm-hmm.
"I'm living that right now. I have that problem now," and that inspired us to go, right, we need to share at least one way of looking at solving that and getting out of that space, which is what the book's about. So it was really good proof point. It proved the problem existed, which I
Yeah.
guess we're applying product management to our book.
Yeah, I love it. So to play this back, it sounds like one of the premises of the book is that product market fit is um is not a binary thing, it's a linear thing. It may even be a lagging indicator in that, kind of what got you fit to raise your A round may not get you the enough fit to get your B round. And you need to kind of evolve. That's super interesting. Yeah, I kind of also feel like sometimes product market fit, like you might have it now, and it's not like you get it and it's a lifetime annuity.
No, exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
Well, the market changes and your product changes.
yeah,
These things, neither of those things are well. Normally, neither of those things are static.
yeah, yeah. So, what is the approach to know if you've got this? So, I guess the momentum gap is like maybe you had fit before and now you're in a different situation.
That's exactly
Yeah.
it. The gap we describe, and this is the experience of from scale up founders that we worked with or interviewed for the book, um, is that experience where when you're starting to go broader, go bigger, you're starting to get those sales requests. I work mainly in B2B, by the way, probably worth highlighting because
Hmm.
obviously the B2C environment's a little different. But as you're starting to go broader and bigger in B2B, say you were say you sold software to the retail sector. The retail sector is enormous. There's lots of variations in retail. That
Hmm.
could be a coffee shop, it could be a furniture store, it could be a grocery store, a supermarket, and how those different parts of those different niches within retail all behave very differently, have different business models, different margins, and different needs. If you're a MarTech vendor, for example, a SaaS MarTech vendor, their needs are going to be very different between those different sub niches. And often when we work with founders, we find that they weren't aware that they were actually doing their fit was within one of those sub niches. They weren't always super aware of that.
Hmm.
So when they got funding and went bigger across all of retail, their fit wasn't as strong with some of those other niches. They might have been doing really well, say, with grocery stores, and now they're selling to furniture stores, which are a completely different beast. And maybe their product's not such a good fit. So as they expand quickly and start trying to pitch to that wider audience, you start to get that sales feedback of, oh, if we could build this feature, I could close this deal. And if the sales aren't, if targets aren't being met or as easy as you would hope, it becomes very easy to become less disciplined and go, okay, let's build that feature to close that deal. Let's build that feature to close that deal.
Hmm.
And as soon as that happens, what we're actually doing is just improving our fit very minusculely in lots of different niches at once rather than systematic. So that organic approach suddenly means we're leveling up the product. We might make it a little bit better for a customer that happened to be in the sub niche of coffee shops, and we might make it slightly better for the sub niche of grocery stores. But we're not systematically putting our investment to go deep in one of those next, and therefore get strong fit to get the sales cycle and revenue and growth we would like. So we end up doing it quite organic, despite the fact that we can fool ourselves and think, oh, we're focused, we're only working in retail. There's always a sub niche. So it's very much about trying to avoid that approach and be much more systematic about it. And some of that is about understanding product strategy in a new and better way. Because product strategy is so frequently the part where this goes wrong. And it's not that people hadn't got a good thinking of strategy. We work with people who are very clever and done an awful lot of research and great discovery and really understand where they want to go. But how they execute it gets lost really fast. And as soon as that gets lost and we end up executing organically, not systematically, the problems start to fall into place quite quick.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about some of the common pitfalls you've seen around product strategy.
Yeah.
What happens when these, clever, earnest, hardworking, experienced product leaders end up, kind of going sideways or drifting?
Yes, perfect. Great question. Thanks, Tom. I think the first thing I'd maybe quickly get your thoughts really fast is very frequently there's a product strategy document of some sort, probably a good piece of summarized research, good deck, good PowerPoint somewhere that has been agreed by leadership team or the board.
Hmm.
But then the execution of it very quickly goes from big deck to a roadmap.
Mm-hmm.
And the roadmap is the articulation of the strategy very, very often of how we'll execute it. Do you see the same? Do you see it go to roadmap really quick?
Oh yeah. Sometimes in one step.
Yeah, immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. That's the last page of the strategy doc.
Yeah.
Here's the roadmap. And the problem with that is so often, and there's a lot of amazing work out there about how to roadmap better. But so often that roadmap is a list of features we think we're going to have to build. Mm-hmm. It so quickly gets to the real delivery point of the execution, which immediately disempowers teams, of course, and there's problems with that. But the real issue when we're thinking about it strategically is we're committing to the roadmap rather than committing to the strategy. The commitment from the product leader upwards and to the wider business is we're going to deliver this roadmap rather than agreeing what the real value assumptions are and saying we're going to deliver this piece of value. So I'd like to think for a second about a different part of the business, a different department. If we look across at our friends in marketing, they're there to support, like we are, the business goals. They're there to support, achieving revenue, it's either going to be retention, acquisition, or churn, or upsell. Sorry, those three things are normally our drivers in B2B software. And in the marketing world, they campaign if we're doing the lead generation, they're going to commit to leads and they're going to commit to where they're getting those leads from, what sources, what the persona, what the ICP is, what the ideal customer profile is, and they have a plan around which channels they're going to use. But they're not going to commit today for the next 12 months of what every campaign for the next 12 months would look like. We're going to start January, the beginning of the year, and commit to our copy in December of what the ad copy would look like. But for some reason, we do exactly that in product. We commit straight away to exactly how we're going to spend the whole year. So instead, we've started to try to help companies think about it a little different. We think about the business goal. We think about the value, how we create value for the customer. This all happens today. We go one step further and articulate the product strategy as what user behaviors will we change. If you think about what happens when when product do their job, we don't want to be described as feature factories, but at the end of the day, we release features. And that's when the rubber hits the road. We update, we modify or release features. And what happens when we do that? Well, a user in our client's business, their behavior is modified in some way. They're going to do something quicker, faster, more complicated, easier, something they couldn't do yesterday, they can do today. We're going to modify their behavior in some fashion. And it's that's really the strategic. That's really the strategic goal. And that's the value assumption that gets left unspoken and not committed to quite often. Not always, but quite often. Some businesses do this brilliantly. What's the user behavior that we're going to change in order to create that value for the customer, which will in turn create value for us because they'll pay us. And it's that piece that we've really focus on in the book about how to expand that value assumption and articulate our strategy as value indicators that indicate the user behaviors. If we can agree as a leadership team, these are the user behaviors in our clients we've got to modify, and that will generate value, we suddenly are aligned in what matters. Say commercial are aligned, marketing know what they've got to talk about, and product are empowered to go and work out which features are going to do that best, rather than committing to a roadmap full of features up front. Instead, we're committing to what the user. We talk so much about outcomes over outputs, and I don't know if that's used in America very much. It's a very common phrase in the UK, and doing that is very hard. Focusing on user behavior in B2B software is one way we found to make that much, much easier. And if we can commit to those behaviors, then we can say, great, we're going to work this quarter on changing these two behaviors we know are valuable. And then the team has the space, the products, the cross-functional teams have the space to then experiment with different features and put different things out and learn what's going to work best and the least investment in order to generate that user behavior, which we've already strategically decided that we believe that is where we're going to put our money to generate the value for the customer.
This is super interesting, Dave. Maybe you could share an example of where a team or company you work with was focused on, some sort of outcome, and then they embraced the user behavior kind of goal instead, and how they manage that transition. Because I definitely identify with many teams I've worked with are very much focused on outcomes, and it's like, well, a certain number of users or a certain amount of sales or whatever it is. And it is difficult to kind of cross that bridge from, well, here's a bunch of features to here's some revenue target we have, and like we hope magic happens in between the two, but maybe the user behavior stuff is kind of a good kind of interim
just
guide.
the conduit. Yeah. So I'll give you an example. I think we use it in the book. Unfortunately, most of my examples come from coaching, working with product leaders, and annoyingly, for the sake of sharing, I'm under NDA for most of those things. So it's a little hard sometimes, but I've got a couple where I can talk more freely, and it's easy to explain. And perhaps one of the easiest is to think about marketing, because a lot of my clients are in all sorts of very unique, different B2B solutions, but we all understand marketing. So if we were to think about a MarTech, say an email marketing system that might be, out there trying to, quite a fragmented market, quite a difficult space, so a really good one. If one of the outcomes could easily be a business goal, so a business objective, we want to increase retention, say. We want to reduce churn. We have a churn problem, pretty common business outcome. Normally, product strategy would help us identify what values we think we want to play to the customer to achieve, we improve to the customer to reduce that churn. And in the example I'm going to share, this particular company, one of the things they'd looked at to reduce churn was they identified in their product strategy was, we need to help companies improve their CTR, their click-through rate on their emails, specifically the open rate. Sorry, not CTR, the open rate. Somebody clicking on it in the email client and opening up the email. So we've got more chance of the email, whatever the email's goal being successful. So the open rate. And that's a pretty common thing to try and focus on. We want to improve open rate. So how can we make our product do that? And there's a lot of avenues you could go down there. Loads of potential ways you could think about that. So if you stopped at that point, you're not giving too much strategic guidance to your teams. There's no guardrails. I could run off and look at networking issues and spamming issues of why perhaps our delivery might not be working at a network level, and emails aren't landing. But if I get more of them landed, then I've got more chance of them being opened. I could chase that. I could look at something completely different. In the work we did with this particular company, they thought they did the work thinking about the user behavior and validate it with good discovery, good product research, and decided that the key user behavior they needed to improve was headline writing. We've got to help people, the subject line in the email. We've got to help our customers produce better subject lines. They analyzed all their data and realized that was the pain point for this particular goal. So we've gone from, just to play back, business goal of improved retention, customer value assumption of being, if customers get more opens, we're going to have less churn. It's a strategic assumption. But we've gone that little bit further of saying improving subject lines. So a headline or subject, whichever you prefer, same thing. Improving that. That's the behavior. That's the user behavior we're really going to focus on to achieve that goal. Now, to achieve that, there's lots of things a product team could do. Focused on subject line instead of just open rate, given that extra level of extra guardrail, being able to measure that, being able to measure how well people are writing this and find a value indicator to measure it. That team was able to then really focus on that problem. And there's still many, many ways they could solve that problem. They could look to have some inline evaluator to see if it's going to be caught by spam filters, some tool some AI-based tool to help people write it, a template of commonly used phrases that generate high open rates, ways to A/B test the headline before they run the whole campaign. There's lots and lots of different features that we might build as a team to overcome that particular, to create that behavior. But focused on that behavior, the team was able to release and experiment with different things, work with their market, their particular market, make it fit for their market. It turned out that the market this company served particularly didn't have worked with in-house marketeers, but their in-house marketeers weren't the most digital savvy because their target audience was more of a bricks and mortar businesses. So they're, unlike, say, working with a target audience where they were digital agencies who have a different view on the world. So that changed the features they might build. And they were able to experiment and focus their teams on that. Now, they had 7 user behaviors that they were focused on for the year. That was just one of them. The other 6 weren't necessarily bound to the customer value of open rates. They're bound to other things. They're bound to click-through. They're bound to some other things. Bound to how to improve click-through. And there are 2 or 3 behaviors to do with that. One around design. I can't actually remember all the others. There was design, content, and something else. But it gave more guardrail to the team. It gave us a way to measure whether we were achieving our strategy, whether we're executing on it, and a way to evaluate mid-year or even quarterly to evaluate whether our strategic assumptions were correct. We could compare our leading indicators where we knew we were making this thing happen. Our users were now doing this thing more or better. And we've got some sort of indicator that that's happening. And we're able to then look at the lag metric, which might be the churn in this example at mid-year, and compare what's happening and find out, if our leading indicator is going up and our lag metric isn't. What's that mean? What's that tell us? Does that mean our assumptions were incorrect and we're chasing the wrong strategic goals? Does that mean there's something else going on in the market? Why is that? In this particular example, they were able to see the leading indicators of user behaviors they were chasing improve, and at the right with the right lag, they're able to correlate it to the laggy metrics and see they were going up too. Obviously, it might not have been the cause, but it's fair enough to assume that if the 2 are going up, our strategy doesn't look like it's incorrect. Now, I work with other teams where the opposite happened. The indicator was going up. They were creating that user behavior, but the lag metric was static, which suggested our strategic assumptions were wrong. And that was incredibly valuable because we were able to pause halfway through the year, re-strategize, and make some big changes in investment. And by the end of the year, we started to see those metrics starting to go in the right direction. Normally with product strategy, we don't have that ability to validate midpoint whether we're going in the right direction. So there's multiple benefits from articulating our strategy as around user behavior. It puts the user centric. It gives us a way to evaluate our strategic assumptions. It aligns everybody around those assumptions, which is phenomenally valuable all on its own. And it empowers the product teams with sensible guardrails for them to focus on instead of focusing on anything at all.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the example where, in some cases you focused on, you actually achieve what you wanted in terms of moving the user behavior, but then the business outcome doesn't seem to change. And it sounds to me like there's this hierarchy of, at the highest level, like we want to maximize shareholder value or enterprise value or growth. And then way down, it's like build this feature by September kind of thing. And then the impact the open rate is this behavior kind of in the middle that kind of glues the two together. I'm curious to get your thoughts on have you seen teams figure out the right level of guidance to provide? Because if the open rate isn't the driver of the business outcome that we thought it was, then yes, we found out half year, but we maybe could have found out earlier if we told the team, look, just help us address churn and you go figure out what behaviors you think are going to impact it the most. On the other hand, like you could look up and 6 months later, the team's wandered around and hasn't really gotten anywhere. How do you think about the level
Yeah,
of guidance?
I love this question because we talk about I talk about this quite a lot with founders. That I think this all is what the I would rephrase the question slightly. I think what we're saying here is how granular and how prescriptive do we want our strategic guidance to be for our teams? Do we want
Yes.
it to be very narrow or do we want to be very, very broad?
Mm-hmm.
And, there is a place and time for both. And that's the lovely thing here. I think if we've got the knowledge in the business to inform the goal, we have the evidence, it's less of an unknown, then it's better off that we align around that information altogether and go focus after it. So if it's a little less unknown and more concrete where the strategy should direct, we should direct it. We shouldn't be scared to not if we know that's there. What we shouldn't do though is inform the solution, dictate how the solution will be achieved. But we should drive and support our teams to go in a direction we think has highest probability. I think of it always as a strategic bet. Mm-hmm. And a bet has a stake and it has a probability, it has odds, which are risk. And it has a winning, obviously, which is the thing we all want. And, if the stake is high and the odds are low, then which means that we know a lot about this, then we can be very prescriptive. If it's the opposite, if the stake's low, then forget those ones. They're just quick wins. I'm not too interested about those things because they're not difficult. If the stake's high but the odds are high, then we need to decide: do we have the talent in our business? And the maturity in our teams to go and do that discovery work completely broad? And in some businesses, the answer is yeah, we do. We do have that maturity and capability to go broad. Let's just empower that team of wonderful people to go do it. But in other organizations, we don't have that. We've got a team that might be moving from being more project orientated to product orientated, which is really common in the UK at least. And that team is, given the entire scope of go fix churn, it would be too broad and overwhelming for that team. So as leaders, if we're leading that journey from helping our organization be more product led and less dictated, less solution led, then we can't expect that team to succeed because they need support and help. And help focusing on the user behavior helps us get there. On the flip side, when we do have great teams in place, to align everybody around their decisions, it's then what we're really saying is we're giving them the decision around strategy. We're giving them the choice of how they're going to build those strategic bets. So giving those mature teams the opportunity to work that out themselves and then commit upwards, and we still end up with user behaviors as our commitment, but it's coming bottom up to the commitment rather than top down, is fantastic, because then the team has had time to work out what it believes will be the winner, and we're committing and being able to communicate upwards that it's this thing. This is how we will create the value by focusing on these behaviors rather than features ending up on a roadmap.
Yeah, this has been a fantastic conversation, Dave, and there's definitely a lot of nuggets in here that I think people will appreciate. My last question for you is, you've written this book, you do a lot of coaching for founders. What are maybe one or two other things that you find as pieces of advice that you can share with the audience that you find come up kind of often in your work with other companies that that people can benefit from?
Yeah, probably the I think probably the biggest one. If you're a leader or an emerging leader, you're a senior PM trying to grow, or you're a founder or a product leader, whether that's VP or CPO. The thinking about really learning leadership and management traits is really important. I don't know about what it's like everywhere in the world, but product managers in the UK tend to sort of miss out on some of the more traditional management training, because we get to be pretty high paid senior people making big decisions, yet we've never line managed anybody, for example. So there seems to be quite a gap in the workplace of that experience sometimes, and it's learned those experiences are learned very quite towards the more mature side of our careers rather than the beginning, like in other industries, other functions. So when I think about what's a big takeaway that everybody seems to struggle with, it's improving that communication. It's improving communication. It's recognizing you've got to say that if you want your message to get to a team or your stakeholder and you want it to be heard, recognizing you're going to have to say it again and again. You're probably going to have to say it at least 7 times before anybody even remembers it. And learning how to communicate through the art of storytelling, picking up storytelling and learning how to communicate through storytelling really is a really powerful tool for, I think, all product managers, but for the leadership as well.
Yeah, I mean that could be a whole nother book about communications for product leaders.
It could be,
Yeah, it's a art and science for sure. And I just wanted to let everyone know, if you've enjoyed this conversation, the book is now available on Amazon, probably wherever you buy books. I notice I don't think there's a audio version. Is that in?
There is an audio version on the way. I literally listened to it this weekend.
Are you narrating it, or is it
I am not. We've had a professional do it rather than somebody who's slightly more interesting to listen to.
Okay, wonderful.
More dynamic.
Yeah. Well, I'll put a link to the Amazon paper version, and presumably it'll be available on Audible or wherever.
Yeah, it'll be on Audible. It's already on Kindle.
Wonderful. Any last things that you want to bring up before we wrap up, Dave?
Please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or just through my website at righttoleft.io. That's righttoleft.io. Really enjoy getting feedback. It really helps inform future ideas and future content. And I'm planning some leadership habit content following the book next, and so always love to any engagement. Please feel free. Don't be shy.
Love it. In that spirit, if you ever want to have publish a book about product communications or product management, kind of stakeholder relationships, like product eng, product design, product CEO, those kinds of things, I think that would be super interesting as well. It seems like maybe you could just repeat this process of the white paper and then the next book.
That sounds a good idea, Tom. I'll put that down on the list. Thank you.
I love it. All right. Well, thanks again for coming on the show, and hopefully we'll have you back again soon.
Thanks very much.
Later, Dave.